The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss, and Emma Parks stepped onto the polished floors of the Galactic Academy of Unified Species. She was small by any standard. 5'4", with dark hair tied back in a simple ponytail. Her eyes moved slowly across the massive entrance hall, taking in every detail without showing any reaction on her face. Around her, creatures of every shape and size moved through the corridors. Some were tall and thin, made of what looked like living crystal that glowed from within. Others were massive, standing 12 feet tall with 6 arms and skin like gray stone. A few were not solid at all, just floating masses of colored gel that changed shades as they communicated with each other. Emma was none of these things. She was human, and she was the first of her kind to ever walk these halls. A crystal being approached her. His body chimed softly as he moved, and light pulsed through him in waves of blue and white. His name was Instructor Thoas, and he held a datapad in his long, transparent fingers. "You are the Earth student," he said. It was not a question. His voice sounded like wind through glass tubes. "Yes," Emma said. "Emma Park." Thalas looked at his datapad, then back at her. There was something in his expression that Emma recognized. She had seen it many times in the 3 years since humanity had made first contact with the galaxy. It was not quite fear. It was not quite disgust. It was the look people gave to dangerous animals in a cage. "Follow me," Thalas said. "I will take you to your class." They walked through corridors filled with students. Every eye turned to watch Emma pass. Whispers followed her like shadows. She heard the word Earth repeated over and over, always in the same tone, like a curse, like a warning. Earth. The Deathworld. Emma knew what they called her home. She knew the stories they told about it. A planet where the gravity was strong enough to crush the bones of most species. A planet where the air itself was made of oxygen, a gas so reactive that it could burn through metal over time. A planet where every living thing had evolved to kill or be killed, where survival was never guaranteed, where death waited around every corner. They were not wrong. Earth was all of those things. But it was also home. And Emma had learned long ago not to be ashamed of where she came from. Thalas stopped outside a classroom door. "This is Class 7 Omega," he said. "You're assigned group. I trust you will. Behave appropriately." Emma looked at him. "I always do," she said. She walked through the door. The classroom was large and curved, with seats arranged in rising rows like a theater. About 30 students sat scattered across the room. Most of them stopped talking the moment Emma entered. A few kept whispering, not bothering to hide their words. "Is that really a human? Look how small it is. I heard they eat other animals, raw flesh. Disgusting creatures." Emma found an empty seat near the back and sat down. She placed her bag on the floor beside her and folded her hands on the desk. Her face showed nothing. No anger, no fear, no reaction at all. In the front row, a massive figure turned to look at her. He was Dreth, one of the 6-armed giants that dominated galactic trade and politics. His skin was the color of storm clouds, and his eyes were small and black, like stones pressed into clay. His name was Kevin Wright, and his father owned one of the largest shipping companies in the sector. Kevin had heard of humans. His father talked about them often, and never with kind words. In just 3 years, Earth had gone from an unknown primitive world to a serious competitor in galactic trade. They were aggressive, ambitious, and worst of all, they were succeeding. Kevin's family had lost 3 major contracts to human companies in the last year alone. And now one of them was sitting in his classroom. A small female with no claws, no armor, no visible weapons of any kind. She looked soft, breakable. "Look at that," Kevin said to his friend Marcus, another Dreth who sat beside him. "They actually let one of those animals into our school." Marcus laughed, a deep rumbling sound that came from somewhere in his chest. Maybe they are hoping it will die from the stress. I hear humans are fragile. Their bodies break easily. Everything about them breaks easily, Kevin agreed. They come from a death world, but they are not strong because of it. They are just desperate. Cornered animals fighting for survival. He said this loud enough for Emma to hear. He wanted her to hear. He wanted to see her react, to see fear or anger flash across her face. Emma did not react. She sat perfectly still, her eyes fixed on the front of the room, waiting for class to begin. The only movement was a slight tightening of her jaw, so small that no one noticed. But she had heard every word, and she would remember. The instructor arrived a few minutes later, a Valori-like phallus, and class began. The subject was Galactic History, a required course for all first-year students. Emma listened carefully, taking notes on her datapad. She did not speak. She did not ask questions. She was a ghost in the back of the room, present but invisible. When class ended, the other students filed out quickly, most of them giving Emma a wide space as they passed. Kevin and Marcus were the last to leave. Kevin stopped at Emma's desk and looked down at her. "Human," he said. "Do you know who I am?" Emma looked up at him. She had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. He was nearly 3 feet taller than her. "No," she said. Her voice was calm and flat. Kevin smiled. It was not a friendly expression. "I am Kevin Wright. My family controls 30% of all shipping in this sector. We were here long before your primitive species crawled out of your caves. And we will be here long after you are gone." Emma held his gaze without blinking. "Okay," she said. For a moment, Kevin did not know how to respond. He had expected fear. He had expected submission. He had not expected this small creature to look at him like he was nothing more than an obstacle in her path. "Watch yourself, human," Kevin said finally. "This is not your world. You do not belong here." He turned and walked away, Marcus following close behind. Emma sat alone in the empty classroom for a long time after they left. She thought about her grandmother's words before she had boarded the shuttle to come here. The old woman had held Emma's hands tight and spoken in Korean first, then English, to make sure Emma understood. "Show them what we are made of," her grandmother had said, but only when necessary. Emma looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, hidden by distance and darkness, was a small blue planet that most of the galaxy thought was a mistake of nature. A world that should have killed everything on it, but instead had created something the universe had never seen before. Humans were not the strongest species. They were not the fastest or the smartest, but they were still here. After everything their world had thrown at them, they were still here. And Emma was going to make sure the galaxy never forgot it. 3 weeks passed at the Galactic Academy. For Emma, each day was the same. She woke early, attended her classes, studied in the library, and returned to her dormitory alone. She spoke to no one unless she had to. She kept her head down and her eyes open. The harassment started small. On her 3rd day, Emma found that her homework had been deleted from the Academy's computer system. She stayed up all night to redo it. On her 5th day, someone bumped into her in the cafeteria and knocked her food tray to the floor. She cleaned up the mess without a word and went hungry that night. On her 8th day, she found a message carved into her dormitory door in a language the translator refused to read. She covered it with a poster and said nothing. Kevin Wright was behind most of it. He never touched her directly, never did anything that could be proven. But Emma saw the way he smiled whenever something went wrong for her. She saw the way his friends laughed when she walked past. She heard the whispers that stopped whenever she got too close. She endured it all. She had been warned that this would happen. Her handlers back on Earth had told her that she would face prejudice, hatred, and fear. They had told her that her mission was not to fight but to survive. To prove that humans could exist peacefully among the other species of the galaxy. So, Emma swallowed her pride and her anger and kept moving forward. Every night, she told herself that it would get easier. Every morning, she woke up to find that it had not. On the 21st day, everything changed. The academy required all students to complete a combat training course. It was not about fighting, the instructor said. It was about discipline, control, and understanding one's own body. Every species had different strengths and weaknesses, and the course was designed to help students recognize both in themselves and others. Emma had been looking forward to this class. On Earth, she had trained in martial arts since she was 6 years old. Her grandmother had insisted on it. "The world is dangerous," the old woman had said. "You must be able to protect yourself." The training hall was a massive circular room with padded floors and high ceilings. Students gathered in groups along the walls while Instructor Ven, a scarred veteran of some long-ago war, stood in the center with a clipboard. Ven was not Dreth or Valori. He was something else entirely, a species Emma did not recognize. His body was covered in thick gray hide, and his face was a mass of old wounds that had healed badly. He moved with the careful precision of someone who had spent his entire life learning how to hurt others. "Today we assess your baseline combat abilities," Ven announced. His voice was like gravel being crushed. "You will each spar with an assigned partner. No weapons. No lethal force. The goal is to score points through clean strikes to designated target zones." He began calling out names and pairings. Most students were matched with others of similar size and species. When Emma's name was called, a ripple of nervous laughter went through the crowd. "Emma Park," Ven said. "You will spar with Kevin Wright." Kevin stepped forward, his forearms already stretching in preparation. He towered over Emma by nearly 3 feet. His hands were large enough to wrap completely around her head. The smile on his face was hungry and cruel. "Try not to break her too quickly," Marcus called from the sidelines. "We want to see her suffer a little first." Laughter echoed through the hall. Ven silenced it with a look. "Take your positions," he said. Emma walked to the center of the mat. She had changed into the standard training uniform, a simple shirt and pants that fit close to her body. For the first time, the other students could see her clearly without the loose clothing she usually wore. She was small, yes, but her arms and legs were lined with lean muscle. Her shoulders were broader than they had looked before. Her stance was balanced and relaxed, her weight centered perfectly over her feet. Kevin took his position across from her. He rolled his shoulders, cracked his neck, and spread his forearms wide. He was going to enjoy this. "Begin," Ven said. Kevin attacked immediately. He lunged forward with all 4 arms sweeping inward, trying to trap Emma in a cage of limbs. It was a classic Dreth opening move, designed to overwhelm smaller opponents with sheer size and strength. Emma was not there. She had dropped low and slid to the side, moving under his arms with a speed that seemed impossible. Before Kevin could turn, she was behind him. Her open palm struck the base of his spine, hitting a cluster of nerves that sent a shock of pain through his entire body. His legs buckled. He caught himself on 2 arms and spun around with a roar of anger. But Emma was already back in her starting position, hands folded behind her back, face completely calm. The training hall was silent. "Point to Park," Ven said. There was something new in his voice, something that sounded almost like interest. "Reset." Kevin's face twisted with rage. He came at her again, faster this time, all 4 arms striking in different patterns, meant to confuse and overwhelm. Emma dodged the first strike, deflected the second, and simply stepped around the third and fourth. Her movements were smooth and unhurried, like water flowing around stones. She struck him twice more before he could react. Once in the ribs, once in the throat. Both hits were precise and controlled, just enough to score points without causing serious damage. Point to park, point to park. Kevin was breathing hard now. Sweat ran down his gray skin. He had never been hit before, not in training, not in real combat. He was the son of a powerful family. He was Dreth. He was supposed to be superior. He charged again, abandoning technique for pure fury. Emma sidestepped, caught his leading arm, and used his own weight against him. He hit the mat hard enough to crack the padding beneath him. Point to park. The match continued for another 5 minutes. Kevin never scored once. Emma scored 7 times. She never initiated an attack, never used more force than necessary. But she also never let him touch her. Every time he thought he had her, she was somewhere else. Every time he opened his guard, she punished him for it. When Ven finally called an end to the match, Kevin could barely stand. His arms hung limp at his sides. His breathing was ragged and wet. He looked at Emma with something that was not quite hatred and not quite fear. It was the look of someone whose entire understanding of the world had just been shattered. "What are you?" he whispered. Emma met his gaze. Her face showed nothing, but her eyes were cold and deep, like the ocean before a storm. "I am from Earth," she said simply. "We adapt." She walked off the mat without looking back. The other students parted before her like waves before a ship. No one laughed. No one whispered. For the first time since she had arrived at the academy, no one said a word about the human girl in their midst. They were too afraid. Instructor Ven watched her go. He had fought many species in his long life. He had killed some and been nearly killed by others. But he had never seen anything move the way this small human moved. She had not fought like someone who wanted to win. She had fought like someone who wanted to survive. And survival, Ven knew, was the most dangerous motivation of all. He looked at Kevin, still kneeling on the mat, still trying to understand what had happened to him. The Deathworld, Ven muttered to himself. Perhaps they earned that name for a reason. The video spread through the academy like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every student had seen it. The great Kevin Wright, heir to one of the most powerful trading families in the galaxy, beaten by a human female half his size. 7 points to 0. He had not landed a single hit. For most species, such a defeat would have been embarrassing but survivable. For the Dreth, whose entire culture was built on dominance and strength, it was a disaster. Among Kevin's people, you were only as good as your last fight. Losing to a stronger opponent was acceptable. Losing to a weaker one was unforgivable. Kevin stopped coming to class. He stopped eating in the cafeteria. He stopped talking to anyone except Marcus, his only remaining friend. The other Dreth students avoided him like he carried a disease. In their eyes, he was already dead. He spent his nights alone in the combat simulation chambers, deep in the basement of the training facility. The rooms were designed to create realistic fighting scenarios using holographic technology. Kevin programmed them to generate human opponents, hundreds of them, and fought them over and over until his hands bled and his muscles screamed. He won every simulation. But it was not enough. The humans in the simulations were just programs, just light and data. They did not move like Emma. They did not look at him with those cold, empty eyes. Marcus found him on the 3rd night, slumped against the wall of a simulation chamber, surrounded by the frozen images of defeated human holograms. "You need to stop this," Marcus said. "You are going to hurt yourself." Kevin laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Look at this," he said, gesturing at the holographic displays that covered the walls. "I have been studying them. Humans, their bodies, their movements, their history." Marcus looked at the screens. They showed human anatomy in detail, muscles and bones and organs labeled in clinical text. Other screens showed combat footage from Earth's violent past, wars and fights and 1,000 different ways that humans had learned to kill each other. Their bones are denser than ours, Kevin said. Did you know that? They evolved under heavy gravity. Their muscles are different too. They have these fibers that can switch between endurance and explosive power depending on the situation. Their bodies are not weak, Marcus. They are just efficient. They do not waste energy on size when they can use technique instead. Kevin, please. This obsession is not healthy. My father called this morning. Marcus went silent. Kevin looked at his hands. They were covered in cuts and bruises from 3 days of non-stop training. He asked if the rumors were true. If I had really been beaten by a human female, a creature from a primitive Deathworld that most civilized species avoid entirely. What did you say? I could not lie to him. He already knew the answer. Kevin's voice was hollow and dead. He told me that I am no longer his heir, that I have brought shame to our family name, that as far as he is concerned, I am no longer his son. Marcus did not know what to say. Among the Dreth, family was everything. To be cast out by your own father was worse than death. It meant you had no place in the world, no future, no purpose. I am going to kill her, Kevin said quietly. Marcus blinked. What? The human. Emma Park. I am going to kill her. Kevin finally looked up, and his eyes were empty of everything except hate. Not here. Not where there are witnesses. She walks alone to her dormitory every night through the botanical gardens. The path goes through a section where the sensors are old and unreliable. Maintenance has been requesting upgrades for years, but the Academy never approved the budget. Kevin, you cannot be serious. If you are caught, they will execute you. Your family will be ruined completely. My family is already ruined. My father made that clear. Kevin stood up slowly, his joints cracking from hours spent on the cold floor. I have nothing left to lose, Marcus. Nothing except my honor. And I am going to take it back from her, one piece at a time. Marcus looked at his friend. They had known each other since childhood. They had grown up together, trained together, dreamed together of the powerful men they would become. Now he saw only a stranger wearing Kevin's face, a creature driven mad by shame and loss. Are you with me? Kevin asked. Or not? Marcus hesitated. Every part of his mind screamed at him to refuse, to walk away, to report this conversation to the Academy authorities. But Kevin was his oldest friend, his only friend now that the others had abandoned them both. I am with you, Marcus said finally. Kevin smiled. It was a terrible expression, twisted and wrong, like a wound that had healed badly. Good, he said. Tomorrow night, we will be waiting for her. What neither of them knew was that the combat simulation chambers were not as private as they thought. The Academy's maintenance system monitored every room in the facility, tracking power usage and equipment status. It was a simple program, not intelligent in any real sense, but it was designed to flag unusual activity. 3 nights of continuous simulation usage was unusual enough to generate a report. That report included a transcript of everything said in the room during that time. And because the transcript included specific threats against a specific student, the system automatically forwarded it to the student in question. Emma read the message on her datapad that night, sitting alone in her dormitory room. The lights were off. The only illumination came from the screen in her hands, casting pale blue shadows across her face. She read the transcript twice. Then she read it a 3rd time. Her expression did not change. Her breathing did not quicken. Her hands did not shake. When she was finished, she closed the datapad and sat in the darkness for a long time. She thought about her options. She could report the threat to the Academy authorities. She could request a security escort. She could avoid the botanical gardens entirely and take a different route to her dormitory. All of these options would solve the immediate problem, but they would not solve the real problem. Kevin would not stop. He would find another opportunity, another moment when she was vulnerable. He would keep trying until he succeeded, or until one of them was dead. Emma had learned about predators on Earth. She had learned that you could not make a predator stop hunting by running away. You could only make them stop by showing them that you were not prey, that you were dangerous, that attacking you would cost them more than they were willing to pay. She stood up and walked to her closet. In the back, behind her clothes and school supplies, was a small case that she had brought from Earth. She had hoped she would never need to open it. She opened it now. Inside were things that did not look like weapons to most species. A roll of tape that could bind broken limbs or strangle throats. A small flashlight that could blind sensitive eyes. A metal pen that could punch through armor if you knew where to strike. And her hands. On Earth, they said that a trained human's hands were the most dangerous weapons of all. Not because they were strong, but because they were precise. Because they could find the weak points that everybody had and exploit them without mercy. Emma began to prepare. Tomorrow night, she would walk through the botanical gardens as she always did. She would give Kevin his chance. She would give him the opportunity to change his mind, to walk away, to prove that he was better than his worst instincts, but she did not expect him to take it, and she was ready for what would happen when he did not. The botanical gardens were beautiful at night. Plants from 100 different worlds grew together in carefully maintained harmony, their leaves and petals glowing with soft light. Some were blue like deep water. Others burned red like dying stars. A few shifted through colors that had no names in any human language. Emma walked slowly through the winding paths, her hands in the pockets of her jacket. She had taken this route every night since arriving at the academy. It was peaceful here, quiet in a way that the rest of the station never was. The air smelled like growing things, like life refusing to surrender to the cold emptiness of space. Tonight, the beauty felt distant. Emma's senses were focused elsewhere. She listened to the sounds beneath the sounds, the rustle of leaves in the recycled air, the hum of the environmental systems, the soft footsteps that were trying very hard to be silent. There were two of them. She had known that from the transcript. Kevin and Marcus. They were big, clumsy, unused to hunting anything that could fight back. On Earth, they would have been terrible predators. They made too much noise, displaced too much air, sent too many vibrations through the ground. But they were not on Earth, and they were not hunting Earth prey. "Hello, Kevin," Emma said without turning around. "Marcus." The footsteps stopped. A moment of silence. Then, two massive figures emerged from the shadows of a flowering tree, their gray skin turning pale in the garden's light. Kevin held something in one of his hands. It was a weapon, a metal rod about 2 feet long that hummed with contained energy. Emma recognized it from her briefings before leaving Earth. It was called a neural disruptor, illegal on Academy grounds, capable of delivering enough electrical current to stop a death heart instantly, or to make a human's death very, very slow. "You knew," Kevin said. His voice was flat, empty of everything except cold determination. "I knew." Emma turned to face them. Her posture was relaxed, her weight evenly distributed between her feet. Her hands were still in her pockets. "I also gave you a chance to change your mind." "Why?" "Because despite everything, I did not want this." Kevin laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Did not want what?" "To prove that you are better than us? That is all you have done since you arrived. Looking down on us from your precious Deathworld like we are the primitive ones. I was not looking down on anyone." Emma's voice was quiet, calm, almost gentle. I was trying to survive. That is what we do, Kevin, on Earth. That is all we have ever done. Survive. We survived predators with claws and teeth bigger than our entire bodies. We survived diseases that wiped out half our population in a single generation. We survived ice ages that covered our world in frozen death. We survived each other. She paused, letting the words hang in the air between them. We are not special because we are stronger or faster or smarter than everything else. We are special because we are still here. Because no matter what the universe throws at us, we refuse to die. Kevin raised the neural disruptor. Let us test that theory. He swung. The weapon hummed through the air, leaving a trail of blue light behind it. It was a powerful swing, driven by all the rage and shame and hatred that had been building inside Kevin for weeks. A hit from that weapon would have dropped an armored soldier. It would have burned through Emma's nervous system like fire through paper. If it had hit Dot in the time it took Kevin's arm to complete its arc, Emma's left hand was already moving. It came out of her pocket in a blur. Fingers extended and caught his wrist from below. The contact lasted less than a heartbeat, but it was enough to redirect the weapon's path upward and away. Dot at the same moment. Her right hand struck his elbow. Not the joint itself, but the cluster of nerves just above it. The pressure was precise and brutal. Kevin's arm went numb from elbow to fingertips. The neural disruptor flew from his grip and disappeared into the darkness of the garden. Time. 1 second. Kevin's scream began. But Emma was already moving again. She pivoted on her left foot, using Kevin's own falling body as a counterweight. Her right knee came up, driven by muscles that had evolved under Earth's crushing gravity, strengthened by years of training that most species could not survive. The knee connected with Kevin's mandible. The Dreth facial structure was designed for intimidation, not protection. It had evolved on a world where the Dreth had no natural predators, where size and strength were all that mattered, against a human knee driven at full force. It crumpled like wet paper. The sound was like nothing Marcus had ever heard. A wet cracking noise, followed by a spray of blood that looked black in the garden's strange light. Kevin's head snapped back, his small dark eyes rolling up until only the white showed. Time. 2 seconds. Emma did not stop. Her body continued its rotation, and her elbow slammed into the side of Kevin's neck just above the shoulder. It was a strike designed to incapacitate, to overwhelm the nervous system with pain signals too intense to process. Kevin's body jerked once, twice, then went completely limp. He collapsed to the ground in a heap of tangled limbs, his forearms splayed at angles that did not look natural. Time. 3 seconds. Marcus had not moved. He stood frozen in place, his mind unable to process what his eyes had just witnessed. Kevin was the strongest person he knew. Kevin had won every fight he had ever been in. Kevin was Dreth, born of a species that had dominated this sector for 1,000 years, and the small human female had destroyed him in 3 seconds. Emma turned to face Marcus. She was not breathing hard. Her hands were not shaking. Her face showed no emotion at all. But her eyes were different now. They were dark and deep and empty, like holes punched through the fabric of reality. Marcus had looked into the eyes of killers before. He had seen the cold emptiness that came from taking life without remorse. But he had never seen anything like what lived behind Emma's gaze. It was not hatred. It was not triumph. It was not even anger. It was calculation. Pure, cold, perfect calculation. The look of a predator that had evolved to survive the most dangerous world in the known galaxy. Run, Emma said. Her voice was soft, almost kind. Like a warning between equals, Marcus ran. He did not look back. He did not try to help Kevin. He simply ran, crashing through the garden's carefully maintained plants, tripping over roots and stones, not stopping until he burst through the exit and into the bright, Lights of the Academy's main corridor. Security found him there an hour later, huddled against a wall, mumbling the same words over and over. She was not human. She was not human. She was not human. Back in the garden, Emma stood over Kevin's broken body. She checked his pulse, found it steady, and allowed herself a small exhale of relief. She had not wanted to kill him. On Earth, in that situation, she would have been justified. But she was not on Earth, and she had to live with the consequences of her actions. She pulled out her communication device and called the Academy's emergency services. Then she sat down on a nearby bench and waited. The garden was beautiful. The lights played across the plants in patterns that seemed almost alive. Somewhere in the distance, a water feature gurgled softly, recycling the same drops over and over in an endless cycle. Emma looked at her hands. They were steady, clean, not even a bruise. 3 seconds. That was all it had taken. 3 seconds to end a confrontation that had been building for weeks. 3 seconds to prove something that humans had known for their entire history as a species. It was not size that mattered. It was not strength. It was the willingness to do whatever was necessary to survive, and no species in the galaxy was more willing than humanity. The emergency lights appeared in the distance, growing closer. Emma stood up, brushed off her jacket, and prepared to explain what had happened. She had a feeling it was going to be a long night. The Academy's medical bay worked through the night. Dreth surgeons, assisted by the most advanced healing technology in the sector, spent 6 hours rebuilding Kevin's face. His mandible had been shattered in 12 places. The bone had to be removed entirely and replaced with synthetic material grown in a laboratory. His nervous system had suffered massive trauma from the strikes to his neck and spine. He would need months of therapy before he could walk properly again, but he would live. The doctors said it was a miracle. A few millimeters in either direction, a little more force behind any of the blows, and Kevin would be dead. Emma had been very, very careful. The next morning, she sat before the disciplinary committee in a chamber filled with students and faculty. Word had spread through the Academy like wildfire. Everyone wanted to see what would happen to the human who had nearly killed the son of one of the most powerful families in the sector. The chamber was circular, with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. Emma sat alone on that platform, her hands folded in her lap, her face calm and unreadable. Above her, the committee members looked down from their elevated positions. Instructor Thales presided, his crystalline body flickering with agitated light. "The evidence is clear," Thales announced, his voice ringing through the chamber. Kevin Wright and Marcus Bell planned a premeditated assault on a fellow student. They armed themselves with illegal weapons and waited in ambush. Miss Park defended herself against their attack. He paused, letting the words settle over the crowd. However, the degree of force employed exceeds what many would consider reasonable. Kevin Wright's injuries are severe and permanent. The committee must address this. Emma nodded. "May I speak?" "You may." She stood slowly and looked around the chamber. Hundreds of faces looked back at her. Some were curious. Some were afraid. Some were angry. She met each of their gazes without flinching. "I am from Earth," she began. "A Deathworld, as you call it. A planet where the average lifespan of a species, from its first appearance to its extinction, is about 1 million years. Humanity has existed for 300,000 years. We have survived ice ages that froze our entire world. We have survived volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun for years at a time. We have survived diseases that killed half our population in single outbreaks." She paused. "And we have survived each other. In our history, humans have fought and killed more humans than any natural disaster or predator ever has. We have spent our entire existence learning how to destroy ourselves and how to protect ourselves from destruction. Her voice was steady, clear, reaching every corner of the chamber. I did not come here to prove that humans are dangerous. I came here to learn, to build connections between our species and yours, to show that we can exist peacefully among the other peoples of the galaxy. But I will not apologize for defending myself. She turned to face the list directly. On Earth, we have a saying, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Kevin showed me who was. He told me what he planned to do. He armed himself and waited for me in the dark. And when he attacked, I stopped him. With extreme force, Dallas said. With appropriate force. Emma's voice did not waver. Kevin Wright is twice my size. He has 4 arms. He was carrying a weapon designed to kill. He had stated clearly that he intended to end my life. By human standards, I showed restraint. He is alive. He will recover. On Earth, in that situation, survival was never guaranteed for either party. The chamber was silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Finally, Thalas leaned forward. The committee has reviewed the evidence, including the recording from the maintenance system that Miss Park submitted. We find that Emma Park acted within acceptable parameters of self-defense. A murmur rippled through the crowd. No disciplinary action will be taken against her, Thalas continued. Kevin Wright and Marcus Bell are expelled from the academy, pending criminal charges for planned assault with a deadly weapon. The murmur became a roar. Students shouted questions and objections. Some cheered. Some called for justice. But through it all, Emma stood perfectly still on the central platform, her face showing nothing. When the noise finally died down, Instructor Ven approached her. The old warrior had been watching from the back of the chamber, his scarred face unreadable. "You let him swing first," Ven said quietly, so only Emma could hear. "You could have ended it before he even raised the weapon. Why did you wait?" Emma looked at him. "Because I needed witnesses. I needed the record to show that I gave him every chance to stop. Because humans have learned, through thousands of years of bitter experience, that how you win matters as much as whether you win." Ven studied her for a long moment. His eyes were old and tired, but there was something new in them now. Something that looked almost like respect. "Your species is going to change everything," he said. "You know that, yes?" Emma smiled. It was the first real smile anyone at the academy had ever seen from her. It transformed her face, made her look younger and softer, and somehow more dangerous all at once. "That is the plan," she said. 6 months later, the Galactic Academy had 47 human students. The combat training program had been completely redesigned, with human instructors teaching new courses on adaptive defense and efficient movement. Other academies across the sector were requesting similar changes. Emma graduated at the top of her class. She returned to Earth briefly, spending 2 weeks with her grandmother in Seoul, eating home-cooked food and speaking Korean for the first time in months. Then she accepted a position as humanity's first ambassador to the Outer Rim territories, a region of space that most species considered too dangerous for diplomatic missions. On her last day at the academy, she found Instructor Ven waiting for her at the shuttle bay. "I have a gift for you," he said. Holding out a small metal box, Emma opened it. Inside was a medal, very old and very worn, bearing symbols she did not recognize. "It is from my home world," Ven explained. "We give it to warriors who have proven themselves in combat. It has been in my family for 7 generations. I want you to have it." Emma looked at him. "Why?" "Because you showed me something I had forgotten. That true strength is not about size or power. It is about the willingness to survive, no matter the cost." Ven smiled, and for a moment, he looked almost gentle. "Your people will go far, Emma Park. I am glad I lived long enough to see the beginning." Emma closed the box and put it in her pocket. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." She walked onto the shuttle without looking back. In the halls of the academy, a new saying had begun to circulate. Students whispered it to each other in the corridors, in the dormitories, in the training halls. It was part warning, part respect, and part simple truth. Never strike a human. They remember, they adapt, and they always survive. Back on Earth, Emma's grandmother sat in her small apartment in Seoul, watching the news feeds from across the galaxy. She saw her granddaughter's face on the screen, calm and serious and impossibly young. She saw the headlines about the first human ambassador to the Outer Rim. She saw the experts debating whether humanity was ready for such responsibility. The old woman smiled and turned off the screen. "Show them what we are made of," she whispered to the empty room. "My brave girl. Show them all." Outside the window, the sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Somewhere among those colors, hidden by distance and light, were the stars that humanity had only begun to explore. They were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the fastest or the smartest or the most advanced, but they were human. And that, in the end, was enough.